Wow,
All
look at
right.
that. It was fucking snow and sleet here today in Dublin.
It's about 28 degrees centigrade here, and I'm basically living on the beach and surfing every day. So I'm not going to rub it in any further than that.
Cool. So Mark Baker, you're back.
I'm back, yeah.
Ready to go? Perfect. So Will is just going to go get a better backdrop for us. I was saying to him it was kind of snowing and sleet shite today in Dublin. So it looked pretty good there. So we'll
sitting under a palm tree here, so it could be worse. All right, so gentlemen, how are we? We keeping well?
Keeping well. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast today. Like I said,
pleasure.
In our email, we follow you on Instagram. The podcast is about business and lifestyle design. I think that kind of overlaps a lot with what you're doing out there. So I think it'd be a great guest to have on the SharkPod. I know Mark had reached out to you originally. I'm not sure how much he dug into what we do. But Mark, what do you think? What's the best way to kind of pitch this as well?
I don't think I said too much about what it is, but essentially, like, it's very casual, with just like a chat. We'd have had on the likes of Jamie White and the guys, and I'm sure there's loads of crossover with people that you know. And yeah, it's just a chat about your journey, all the things you've been up to, and Bingo Loco obviously is really popular. My background is, I don't know if you looked at my Instagram, I'm an artist and a recruitment entrepreneur, I guess, as well, in finance. I can hear a bit of reverb. I can hear myself talking. Can you?
I can't hear you now. It sounds good to me.
Okay. So sorry if I sound strange. I'm hearing myself. Yeah, so that's my background. And me and Luke are brothers-in-law. So that's how it kind of, we know each other. I don't know, what is it now, 15 years or something. So
something like that.
Was this kind of born from the crucible of lockdown and kind of bringing your creativity towards interviewing people and setting something like this up, or did this kind of pre-exist the lockdown?
Well, it pre-existed, yeah. So in January we kicked off the SharkPod last time. It was just to meet interesting people, talk to them, kind of bring a collective of stories of Irish people and abroad. Now it's gone people in Australia and all that type of stuff. But what we were trying to do was go do things on location to meet people, go to their business, all that type of stuff. But since lockdown, we started this in January, I remember on our first episode, I think I said to Mark, I think there's something coming out of China that we should be really paying attention to, or something very
yeah, look what that turned into. That was a hell of a story. Yeah, madness. Well, look, I mean, great project to start, and already have inflow. A lot of people obviously started podcasts during the lockdown, and I think I was getting like an email like once every day of someone going, "Hey, will you do it? Will you come be a guest in our podcast?" and that kind of stuff. And it was a lot of, I think there's a lot of people who've started them and then they haven't continued with them, and they did like 3 months of it and then all of a sudden disappeared off the face of the earth. So yeah, I kind of rarely do them anymore, but it was, I think this one outlines gravitas, and there's a lot of the guests that have been on it before, so I thought it was a good one definitely to come on and talk to you guys.
Great, cool. Well, we'll get cracking. So I'll hit the record button. I'll do some introductions, and then we'll just have a chat. Sound good?
Sounds good, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What is up, Shark Nation? Welcome to another SharkPod here. We are live from Greystone Studios. Mark's out in Glenageary, and our guest, Will Meara, is out there in Mexico. How are you doing, Will?
I'm doing better than most, to be honest with you. I'm sitting under a palm tree on a beach here beside the Pacific Ocean, and just working away in a kind of a co-working space at the moment. And I've been learning Spanish for about 3 months. So using this opportunity to learn, to grow, and to keep working, on the various projects around the globe while I'm on the move.
Absolutely. And for people who have been following the podcast for a long time now, it's all about business, but also lifestyle design. I wanted to talk to people who are kind of being specific about the way that they're living. So it's not so much just the typical kind of path that a lot of people are on, but they're kind of designing what makes them happy, bringing that into their lives as well. For people, for context for Will, Will's the co-founder of Bingo Loco, which is an amazing mix of party and bingo, basically. I think that how do you guys?
It's always very interesting to try and explain to people when people ask, what is it that you do? And I said, well, one of the things I do is Bingo Loco, and it's a bingo rave where we've gamified the game of bingo, which is already a very fun game to play, and we've used it as a focal point to create a very high energy party that's very interactive and immersive. So we get the audience to be part of the show. We use comedy to get people on side. We use music to bring the energy, and we use, hilarious and bizarre prizes to keep people motivated playing right through the night. So it doesn't really matter whether you're up for the night or not. We kind of guide you using various mechanisms to making sure that everyone, by the end of the night, is having a great time. It's very simple. Like marking off numbers on a sheet is the most simple thing you can do. And then we basically use that as a structure, as a framework for bringing kind of a nightlife experience product. And and it's gone really well. And we're now in, I think we're in something like 40 to 50 locations around the world. So it's been a very interesting journey growing what has been initially something that we thought would just be a fun idea. We were all on stage at the first event, didn't really know what we were doing. It lasted 5 hours. We were all having a laugh. We were all a little bit drunk too. We were all dressed up in wigs and outfits and stuff like that, and just enjoying it and making what it was. And afterwards, everyone was like, you have to do that again. And we did. And we think we sold at every event in Dublin for a year straight before we were like, this has legs, let's do it elsewhere.
Wow.
And so we did.
And what the original idea was, it because you guys were doing events already, and this was just something that you guys were gonna give a go? Did someone on the team really love bingo? What was the? It
was a combination of a few things, to be honest. I feel like, so me and my two business partners that started at Craig Reynolds and Stephen Lawless, we had previously all been involved in various different types of events over the years. I've been doing things like wellness retreats and morning yoga raves, and I've been kind of organizing club nights and managing techno parties, and I've had a deep insight into understanding what goes into the nuts and bolts of organizing an event. And my partners have been involved in festivals and, doing marketing for super clubs and stuff like that. So we had the experience under our belt, and we'd seen globally a rising trend in interactive entertainment where people wanted something more than buying a ticket, turning up and watching a show. They wanted to be brought into the show. They wanted to interact with it. They wanted to have some sort of gamification in their night. And we saw things like Secret Cinema, which is an interactive kind of theatrical event that was huge in London. We saw there was things like drag bingo, there was dildo bingo in Reykjavik. There was also things like, there's kind of other kind of bingo parties in Australia, the US and stuff like that. There used to be a thing called Bingo at the Standard in New York. It was basically seen as like a Sunday wild bingo party rollover. And me and one of the partners, Craig, had been playing bingo with a lot of Peshmerga soldiers in a teacher's mess in North Iraq in late 2016. And because we didn't understand Arabic numbers, we made our own rules around, we made a drinking game out of it, for a long story short. And everyone was immediately on side. And I was like, bingo is such a great way to get people, to follow a format. We should definitely make like a drinking game out of this. Maybe it could be something we do with our friends. Maybe we could actually make like a brand the drinking game out of it or something. But very quickly we made a club night out of it because it's what we knew best to do. And Craig brought his marketing side, I brought the creative side, and Stephen brought the production side. And it just turned into an absolute harebrained, mad concept that, just developed very quickly over the first 6 months, from something that was more about high energy on stage to something that became more of a theatrical performance, with scripting, with production elements, with cues, with staff side stage, bringing in various theatrical planned elements. And it just manifested into what's now known as, I guess, the Bingo Loco you'd know today. But if you went to one of the first, say, 6 or 7 events, it was very different. We had, almost semi-naked dances on stage. There was chains involved sometimes. We didn't know whether it was going to go BDSM angle or what was happening with it. And slowly it transgressed into something, I guess, more for everybody. And the audience, we use the audience feedback and their reactions to various elements of the show to slowly tailor it into what it is now,
It's such an interesting thing as well, because so many times I've been so I grew up in Dublin, and that's where I went out at night, and the nightclubs kind of growing up. And I was always surprised at how, not every nightclub, but most of the nightclubs around Dublin, they're packed out, but the level of effort that they were putting in on the entertainment side was really, really low. It was always something I was commenting on, where it was just, we just sell drinks, the music is loud, the music is kind of vanilla. There's no specific type of music we're going to play here, but it's still packed and it's still successful. And I always think there's
It's because there's no alternative offering.
Yeah.
And that's actually a real issue, especially when you compare it to a lot of other, large population centers around the world, like Sydney, New York, London, and the kind of detail that's given to planning nightlife in some of these locations in terms of, for example, one of the clubs that me and the guys love a lot in New York is called House of Yes. And it's the kind of place when you walk in, there's a whole cloakroom of costumes. And there's a whole consent form of behavioral mechanisms that you have to adhere to throughout the night. So you go in and someone's dressed up as a chicken, or someone's dressed up as a fairy, or someone's dressed up as a lizard or whatever it is. And there's themes, and there's like creative energy brought in by the organizers and by the people that come to it as well. They contribute in their own way. And in Dublin, it was very much so. You could nearly, like, anybody could make a Dublin club night, and there was, I think, something like, a lot of promoters were doing, the same club night 7 nights a week, just with a different poster and with a different brand name, and in the same venue. And there was nothing different apart from maybe the DJ or the drink promos. And there's only so much you can think of those formulas before you've done every sort of, variable and permutation combination of club night. And people get exhausted by it. But when there's nothing else to go to, that's all you have. And if you want to go out and socialize in that way, and that's probably why there's a lot of like nightclubs around Dublin that are seeing, even before COVID, a massive decrease in revenue, a massive decrease in the amount of people coming through their doors, and some of them, closing up around the country, apart from, maybe Dublin, where at least there's the population density to actually give them some sort of sustenance. But, there's a big lean towards a lot of interactive concepts because there's simply no other alternative offering in Ireland.
Really? And so, but when you mentioned there, so there's promoters out there that are, or that were out there doing the same night, just with different branding, different posters, or a different DJ or whatever. Was it difficult to sell the Bingo Loco idea to kind of venue owners? Were they like, this? There's whips and stuff going on here, or chains, or whatever. Just give us a drink promo, and let's just get on with it. Or what was the?
Yeah. Well, at the beginning, I think we were lucky because we had such precedents of doing kind of various things. Look, we were the promoters who also did the same thing. We were doing club nights and putting on the same thing as everyone else was for a long time. And it was, it worked, and it still works for a lot of people. And initially, yeah, we had, because of this precedence, we had to try and explain what this concept was. And I think the first one we did on a Thursday night, because no one would give us a Friday night, and we were putting on super early as well, because they didn't want to give us the late night. They didn't know what it was. They thought it was going to be another kind of bingo event. And then, because, and we have loyalty as well. If we're still working with the same venue in Dublin that we kicked off with in the very beginning, even though it only holds 300 people, whereas we might be doing, Mayo in the Castle Bar Royal Theatre, we'd be doing maybe like 1,000 people there. But we have loyalty to the people who, gave us a chance at the start. We still work with them today. And after people saw that, it was selling out and the word was getting around and people were seeing us, I think the turning point was Forbidden Fruit Festival. We did a slot at a tent, and it was very much so. We were kind of like almost like a stage filler, between acts, whatever it was. And there was something like 2,000 people poured in, went absolutely mental. There was beach balls flying everywhere, inflatable flamingos. There was, everyone was on stage going mad, CO2 blasts going everywhere. We let off loads of confetti, and people were going by, everyone just roared into this energy. And we had this video that went, very, very far, got huge traction online. People were like, what's this mad thing? That doesn't look like a bingo event. That's hilarious. And it was shortly afterwards then that we were able to set out Vicar Street, and we started kind of realizing, okay, this is legs. And after doing that, we realized, okay, we need to be more brave with this and see how far we can push it. Can we do the RDS? Can we do a music festival? Can we go global to some of the bigger cities in the world and see if this takes off there? And, and how will it go? And how much money is that going to cost? And so there was a huge learning in terms of, scaling an event brand that, none of us had before. We understood the principles of it, but, we just kind of gave it a go. And to some level, we had great success in a lot of locations.
Cool. And where was the first kind of outside of Ireland that you looked at? Was it the UK? Was it?
Well, okay, outside of Ireland, technically, of course, Belfast would be outside of the Republic of Ireland. And we're working with, the biggest promoters north of the border. And we've had a great working relationship with them. When they've seen copycats trying to come into the market, they would block it and say, no, these are the guys we want to work with. Bingo Loco's here. This is the brand. This is the one. This is the one. So we've had great success in that way in terms of, really making kind of fortuitous relationships with people in certain areas. But I guess the first big location that we saw great success outside of Ireland was probably Australia. And I think it's primarily because a lot of people had moved over and they'd already knew what Bingo Loco was. It was a taste of home for them. Then there was a lot of people who were over their years and had seen this thing kicking off back home. And then finally now it was on their doorstep and they got to give it a go. And so in Sydney, we were selling events within 4 hours and 5 hours after announcing tickets and stuff like that. And, which has been great because during this pandemic, Australia's really locked down their borders. And right now, we're selling out events a lot faster than we expected to in places like Darwin, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, Brisbane, and new locations where normally we wouldn't even be able to start off. Now the reputation's building in Australia and it's seen as an Australian bingo rave. It's not seen as an Irish bingo rave anymore. We're in territories where there's almost no Irish and filling venues. So it's now up and it's running. It's got legs of its own. And now the corporates are booking it. The festivals want it. And it's now entering where we were in Ireland after 2 years in Australia, which is great to see that market finally kick off nationwide. So, yeah, I think Australia definitely. And then after that, then, we were having great success in the US before the pandemic. We were doing sellout shows in New York and both Manhattan and Brooklyn. We were stepping over into Vancouver and Toronto and Canada, selling out shows there as well. And then, but very much so, it's the Irish coming to the show. Cracking the domestic audience was tough because Americans are just very, very different culturally. They're very diverse in terms of, ethnicity, in terms of pop culture interest. And so when it comes to like, what music do you play at an American show? Do you play country? Do you play R&B? Do you play hip? What do you play? So we basically had to like figure all of this out, and we decided we would then kick off in Austin because it would allow us to purely crack the American market, figure out what they wanted, what made them tick. Where we know Maniac 2000 gets people jumping up in a chair and taking their top off in Dublin, that's not going to work in Austin. Maybe we need country roads. Maybe we need something a bit more. Maybe something that works in Austin doesn't work in Wisconsin. So it's a real learning experience in the US, and it's somewhere that's really, really deep in our kind of crosshairs for I guess 2021 when we kind of get back to business, I guess.
Absolutely. And are you guys, so how's this work? Are you guys kind of like hiring people locally to do that? Are you actually flying over to Austin, doing the gig, going to, like I said, Wisconsin when that's open, and you're doing it there as well? Is it the same kind of core thing?
It's a hybrid approach. So for example, in Australia, we have, very talented promoters and people who have like worked in venue management for years. We've assembled a team. There's an office in Sydney, and they kind of manage all the local teams of like DJs and dancers and, and marketeers and MCs and everything else. Because Australia is huge. You've got a massive time difference between East Coast and West Coast. So you really need to have a team that's going to manage a territory that size. Whereas, other territories you can partner with a promoter and do a deal, or other territories you might have a city manager style character who, deploys the actual event and controls the kind of operations locally, but very much so it's HQ, leading the way in terms of, doing a lot of the marketing in advance, building all the reputation, dealing with media, doing the marketing, kind of curating the experience, but just having someone on the ground there to go, do the meetings, talk to the venues, do the setup, and making sure all the boxes are ticked. We have a very, very fixed formula, of a large amount of documentation. So, when you're launching a new city, that person knows exactly what to do, what the press release looks like, how the venue should look, the kind of tech spec that needs to be there. So we've built a formula for how an event's supposed to run, but in each location is very much so run very differently. Like when we launch in a place, we'll fly in an A team, the best MC, the best DJ, the best dancers, the best event managers, and they basically, make sure that it goes really well in the territory. And we'll bring down loads of local DJs, dancers, and MCs, and event managers and promoters to see the show, in the hope that they'll get to understand how it works, what makes the audience kick, and then formulate a team that after a while will then should be able to run autonomously. So there's a bit of hand holding at the start because we're very, very, very careful about how the product's presented to an audience and how the brand's represented locally.
So interesting because there's been so many kind of nights and stuff like in Dublin, and they have good brands for a year or two, and then it kind of fizzles out. Maybe the promoters go do something else or whatever. But to see the kind of standardization in different territories and that type of approach, really interesting. What do you think, Mark? Is that something you can do with the recruitment game? What do you think? The Sydney office, what's going on?
Well, it is. Well, it's easy to do in recruitment, but like, had anyone before you kind of tried to do something similar with a different brand or a different live product, so to speak? Or are you kind of trailblazing in that regard?
I think there's a lot of different trailblazers who, kind of cut their teeth in this kind of entertainment well advanced. Like I said, there was Bingo at the Standard in New York, which was kind of like, doing not nothing very similar, but was very much so like, it was like a brunch with Bingo added into it. And then you had nothing called Rebel Bingo that was in London for about maybe like almost 10 years ago, 2012 it kicked off. And then there was this bingo party in a hostel in Melbourne, 2009, which is like 12 years ago now. So, I mean, even if you go to the regular bingo in National Stadium up there on South Circular Road on, on a Saturday night, you'll see like, mostly women, maybe, of mixed ages getting absolutely lit while playing bingo. It's a great thing to drink at. And if you can put a theatrical show around that, you're definitely onto a winner. And if you look at, I know I mentioned Secret Cinema earlier on, it's very much so like I hold that as a paradigm, the holy grail of an event where, before the event, you're getting an email. It gives you a full character profile, gives you your name, what your job's supposed to be. You've got a whole character to fulfill. You've got a costume to wear. I remember doing the Casino Royale one just outside London, and they had a giant, massive, almost like the size of an airport hangar with different film sets inside, and you had to go in and try and find different agents and get information for them, and you didn't know who was a character who was planted and who was actually just a guest also in the role playing with yourself. And sometimes you're trying to get clues off someone and they're also playing the character so well, but you don't know if they're a guest because you're also playing a character, and you get completely lost in this whole world of being a secret agent and playing poker at a table with people who are clearly in costume, and you have to try and find the top poker table for the finale, and then there's like people falling down from the ceilings and from ropes and helicopter sound effects, and then everyone afterwards watches the actual movie and gets absolutely lit. And it's like this level of interactive entertainment where, for example, at Bingo Loco, we get people on stage doing dance-offs and lip-sync battles. We get the audience, up and dancing and interacting with each other in creative ways, and bring on kind of like, audio-visual kind of hacks where we bring Dustin out to do a piece or whatever it is. So it's just making sure that the audience is engrossed in the show rather than sitting back with a drink and just watching you and bopping along. So it's we're definitely not like the leaders in interactive entertainment, but we've definitely carved out our own niche, even within a niche of what's become known, I guess, as social bingo, which would include things like, drag bingo or titty bingo or chicken shit bingo and all these kind of different bingo concepts around the world. We've just kind of made a little corner for ourselves, put a flag up and called it Bingo Loco.
Really? And this is only started a few years ago. What year would this kind of kick off? Well,
the idea 2016, and we started our first show in 2017 with a budget, I think, of €300 to actually run the event.
How could you barely get enough cards and markers for that?
We were pulling in favors all over the place. We were, buying markers in the pound shop, asking for people to like come down and just, will you do us a favor and loan us some of this or some of that? And, we were like going to charity shops to try and buy prizes. I think with the first show we gave away a broken TV I had in my apartment for about 10 years. A TV from the 90s. I think at one show we gave away a car clamp that we found on the way to the gig, and people went mental for it. Like a car clamp that had been cut off a car that had been parked illegally. So like we really just like, it wasn't about the prizes. It wasn't about like high-end production. It was about having a laugh and getting the audience on side, and it worked.
And Will, just to go back to the very start, like how does an honors graduate from mechanical engineering end up doing what you're doing now?
I think in school I was told I was going to be good at engineering, and so I did. And they were right, I was good at it. I managed to, study hard, got a first class honors. It sits in my bedroom wall as a reminder of something that I did years ago.
That's
Never
incredible,
used
by the
it.
way.
Never used it. No interest in engineering. In college, I think I had 17% attendance. I spent most of my time running events and societies. I ended up, becoming the ENTS officer in DIT for 2 years, getting paid to organize parties, absolute dream. And then shortly afterwards, getting approached by nightclubs to like, will you come in and run events for us? Will you do the marketing for us? Will you, do you be interested in partying? We're doing a club night here and there. And I just kind of got dragged into the events industry. It was something I enjoyed doing. I was always been a very social character. I've always been someone who loves to like go out to meet, to network. And, I think, nightlife and organizing nightlife offer that, and even, later on when I was, going through a very much so a wellness approach, I was still able to bring kind of event organization into that in terms of doing, digital wellness retreats and doing morning yoga raves where you could go in and get a massage and, dance to techno without alcohol or drugs before going to work and essentially raving your way into the day, at 6 a.m. and then going into the office full of energy and everyone's like, what were you doing this morning? And they're still covered in glitter.
Yeah.
So always like, bringing what I love to do into somehow a way to make money. And I guess there was a while where I didn't make very much money at all, but I just love doing it anyway. And I guess that's the nature of an event. And the great thing about events is the revenue model is, even if you don't have a huge amount of money, you're getting the money in advance. It's almost like a Kickstarter campaign where everyone's buying into your event idea by buying tickets, and then, you execute the event for them, and then you take the profits afterwards. So it's very much so a safe revenue model, which is why I guess there's so many, student college promoters out there who are still in promotion today.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that because a lot of the people we talked to that were promoters were ENTS officers in various colleges and universities, and then they kind of afterwards,
Yeah, and I would have known. I know you had Jamie White on here before as a guest, who is, he's now kind of doing something similar as I'm doing. He's working remotely, he's sitting in Bali, managing his own projects and everything else. And obviously, he was very big in the promotions game, the student promotion game in Dublin for many years, and built like a student club night empire, so to speak. And the same with James Morrissey, who now I guess owns several bars in New York, and he has a wine brand with Post Malone, and he's doing great things too. So there's been a lot of people in the Irish kind of club night scene who've gone on to do some very interesting things because it gives you that sense of excitement and entrepreneurial spirit, and you get you get to go to step into the world of entrepreneurialism without having to go pitching for investment for the most part.
Yeah, and you get to have fun along the way, which is always good. And
that's a big part of it.
So if you look at your Instagram there's a lot of travel in the meantime. Is that something that you were doing where you kind of like work, do promotion and stuff like that, and then hit the road for long periods of time, or have you been kind of going to these places like Iraq and North Korea, just kind of here and there? What's the kind of pattern there with the travel?
Well, I think I've traveled a little bit less in recent years because I've had to spend more time in Ireland, actually building Bingo Loco as it grew. But I've still been very fortunate enough, each year to spend maybe 2 months or 3 months outside of the country and building like travel into a way of, my lifestyle. And I initially went traveling to, I guess, explore the world. I had a deep desire to travel and to kind of like, drop everything and go and allow myself to grieve. My mother passing, many years ago, but now I'd gotten so busy just like trying to figure out what I was doing with my life and always trying to find a million projects and being like always on my gadgets, organizing events, super distracted, super hectic. And so in 2016, I basically left and traveled the world for the guts of 14 months, roaming everywhere, figuring out what I wanted in life and, letting go of loss. Ended leaving the love of my life at the time to try and go and do this and figure it out, something I really needed to do. And, I was just fascinated by the people that I met everywhere and found myself very quickly traveling in a way that others didn't. So instead of going from hostel to hostel, from pub crawl to pub crawl, I found myself, staying in the homes of anti-Taliban vigilante fighters in Pakistan or living in monasteries countries in China learning kung fu from Shaolin masters, and couch surfing and opium dens in Iran, and all these kind of mad things. And I'd be going to Iraq and sitting in the front line, fight against ISIS with a lot of Peshmerga army, soldiers and stuff like that, wearing military fatigues and holding a machine gun and all these other things. And I just got so interested in what life is like in places that people don't go to, have fear that's been created by other people, maybe a meet or whatever it is. And when actuality, and going to these places, meeting people who are kind, who are hospitable, where the culture was rich, and realizing that, okay, well, maybe not everywhere is dangerous. Where else can I go and find out the truth about what people are like, and not just, take an opinion of a place based on, a news report or something bad that happened in that place maybe 5-10 years ago. I've fallen in love with a lot of these places. I'm now organizing expeditions in Pakistan for, I think, the last almost 4 or 5 years, bringing groups of influencers, content creators, and just, adventurous souls, up the mountains in Pakistan, and, roaming near the border of Afghanistan in this place called Baltistan, where we go trekking and camping at the base camps of the world's tallest mountains, and meeting ruby dealers, and trying some of the local moonshine, and just kind of allowing people to see what travel can actually be like, when you're not going to the full moon party in Thailand.
Exactly. It's interesting.
Where do we start with all that?
It's a interesting point as well about the media and how they make you feel about countries or people in countries. And I remember when I was going traveling as well, our first stop was South America. We're going to go there for a few months. And I remember getting on the plane and being really worried flying to Rio, thinking that this is going to be, super dangerous, super, scary, all that type of stuff. But then I bet we met some of the nicest people in the world that when we were there. It didn't feel unsafe at all that type of stuff. So it's really interesting. I'm interested to that Pakistan made such an impact on me, because I know a couple of people in work that are from Pakistan, but I've never heard of any kind of Westerners really going there. Are you on your own there quite a lot when you're as a traveler, or is there kind of a subgroup there? If you go there, you'll find people that are like-minded type of thing.
It's definitely not the kind of place where like you'll land in, go to a hostel and meet a lot of other backpackers. It's the kind of place where, you land in, maybe you go on to couch surfing or a Facebook group and you find a local who you'll meet, and you'll make friends with them and hang out with them, and they'll show you where to go, and you'll always be well taken care of. They'll introduce you to their friends. They'll take 2 days off work to bring you into their home and to feed you and to show you around, and like they'll steal your heart. Like initially you're so taken aback, you think they're trying to scam you. You go into a shop and they're like, giving you, here, have a Coke, have a Mars bar, have some crisps, have some cigarettes, and you're like, I don't want these things. They're like, no, it's a gift, honestly. You're welcome to our country. You'll go to a restaurant and you're trying to pay and they won't let you pay. Amazing. And you're like, are they being genuine? And you're like trying to like sneak money into their pockets. They're like, no, please, and afterwards, like, take my number. If you need anything while you're here, you can give me a call, and we'll make sure that you're well taken care of. And if you want a place to stay, you'll always have a place in our home. And you're seriously taken aback. So the first time I went there, I'd finished doing like a 10-day isolation meditation retreat in Burma, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. And I'd shared a room with this Finnish guy who had hitchhiked from Helsinki to Islamabad years before. Really, really inspiring guy. Now one of my best friends. And he basically convinced me to go to Pakistan. But at the time, like, it was very much so still in the media as a place where there was a lot of suicide bombings, a lot of, Taliban kind of growth and stuff like that, which is now completely gone. And, I think Pakistan's probably the only country that's truly won the war on terrorism domestically for the most part. But yeah, like I basically put up on Facebook a post. I said, anyone that can get me like a business visa into Pakistan, because at the time you had to basically fly home and get a tourist visa in your home consulate. And I knew a woman who linked me in with the Chamber of Commerce there, and they said, "Oh, we'll have a speaker series at the moment. We see that you're a public speaker and you're giving talks. You've got a TEDx talk in this thing. Would you be interested in joining our speaker series? We need you to speak for an hour." And I said, "Yeah. And can you give me business visas for 2 friends as well?" And so me and my two friends, we boarded a flight. Luckily, they let us on the flight in Bangkok. There was initially a lot of hesitation because they never seen any white people getting on these flights to Pakistan. And we arrived and we tried the best to dress up in our business attire, a wrinkled shirt at the bottom of a backpack. We put on jeans thinking this was formal. And we landed in, and there was a guy waiting there. There was an immigration officer, military uniform waiting there. And he said, is your good name William? I said, it is. And he brought me into this back office, and he gave us tea and he gave us biscuits. This is the immigration officer, the head of immigration, who was just so delighted to see, foreign tourists coming in, or even business guests, and stamped visas in our passports, and walked us through immigration, walked us through baggage, walked us through the whole airport outside, and handed us to the guy who was collecting us. And from that moment onwards, we were never left alone. In fact, we had to convince people to leave us. We wanted to hitchhike, and people were like, no, we'll bring you up, we'll buy you a ticket. And like, no, we want to hitchhike. It's great for us to meet people. It's a European thing. And people couldn't get their head around us hitchhiking in Pakistan, holding our thumb out with a sign saying Islamabad. And, like people coming up and saying, oh, no, here's money if you need money for a bus ticket, or, I'll call my uncle now to get a taxi for you. Just honestly, just trying to help, thinking we were stuck. But really, all we wanted to do was just hitchhike on one of these colourful trucks that have loads of jingly bells hanging off them. We wanted to do it as an experience. But we got to we got invited to see, where all of the shoes for Dunn stores are made in a factory. We got invited to see a farm where all the milk for Nestle was produced for Pakistan. And we constantly got to meet interesting people again and again and again. And I just became obsessed with the place. And I remember sitting there before leaving, almost like in tears, leaving this place where I'd made such amazing friends so quickly, and promising them all that I will be back and I'll bring more people back and I'll tell everyone how amazing this is. And over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, I'm not an advocate of a lot of the stuff that goes on in Pakistan. Look, it's by no means a perfect country, but more so that the people are beautiful, and I've been bringing people back, and I've been sitting on TV in Pakistan on talk shows, because they're like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, I want to show the world that you're not a dangerous nation, that people should come here, and that it's a great place to travel. It's hard to travel. It's a difficult place. It's a logistical nightmare to get around, and there's a lot that need to work on. But if you don't mind a life a bit rough around the edges, and you don't mind things being perfect, and someone else having no Wi-Fi and sharing with a bucket of cold water, and waiting sometimes ages for your food, or maybe a landslide taking a road away and waiting for 100 guys to build it back with shovels, then it's the perfect place to go on an adventure. And I think this year, I might have up to 4 expeditions, going to Pakistan of, large travel influencers who are super curious to go, but want to go with people who know the lay of the land. I also got a lot of females who want to go on these expeditions because they feel much safer going to a country that I guess would have a very male orientated society in terms of the family structure and how it's orientated and stuff like that. So they would have their concerns about it, even though there's lots of solo female backpackers who explore Pakistan with no issues whatsoever, meet only kindness. I guess they feel safer, more confident going when they're with a group, and people have seen me going for years now, and they trust that they're going to have a very interesting experience when they do go.
Class. And where you mentioned that you're in Iraq as well. These are all kind of places that are not really on the backpacking trail, like you said. What drew you to Iraq? Was that just because it was the most kind of out there place you could think of? You wanted to see what the people were like there? Was it recommended by somebody? How did that come about?
We'd been hitchhiking around, me and my friend Craig, with a Kurdish girl called Sharman, who was very much so an Iranian who, lived the opposite of the way Iranian women were expected to live. She refused to wear the hijab, had her hair dyed blue, lived a very progressive life, and really kind of taught me a lot about, Kurdish people, the plight of the Kurds, the history of the Kurds, and what they've gone through. And through this, we went to the Kurdish region of Iran, and there, we were blown away by how wonderful they were, and how nice they were, and how rich the culture was, and how they've maintained it, even though they've been split amongst 4 different countries. And we'd learned that as an Irish passport holder, you can get 30 days visa free on arrival at the border of Kurdistan, Iraq, which is the northern territory. And actually, if you look online, you'll see a lot of people have started going there, like some of the biggest bloggers in the world now, like Drew Binsky and the Yes Project and stuff like that, have finally now started going to the north of Iraq, and I'm realizing that it is safe. This is obviously, you know, Mosul is now back in, Kurdish Gardari back in control, and ISIS are mostly stamped out there, so people feel safer going there. But at the time, there was an assault, and Mosul was under siege, and there was a lot of different fronts happening across Kurdistan, Iraq, and in the Arabic region of it. But we were curious to kind of check out what was going on. We knew that we'd be met by kindness. If the Kurds this side of the border were nice, they would be nice to the other side, and we were completely correct. And over the course of 2 weeks, we just got wrapped up and embroiled in story of the people. We were going to refugee camps, raising money back home, and going to the bazaars and buying little hats and socks and gloves and boots to help the kids in these refugee camps so that they wouldn't have blistered feet from the cold in the Kurdish winter, which is pretty bitter. And being invited to places that definitely as backpackers you will be seen to be very irresponsible maybe to go to these places, but we were with the general of the Peshmerga army. He's the most successful fighting force against ISIS, and there was no way that this man who we'd made good friends with, and these fixers we made good friends with, these lieutenants that we'd spent a lot of time with, being very well briefed with, were going to bring us to any place where we were going to be at danger.
Okay.
They knew we weren't journalists, although certain people definitely thought we were, and we just embraced it for what it was, as an opportunity to learn. At the time, we'd been kind of doing a lot of investigative travel blogging and kind of recording a lot of the things we were seeing across the Middle East on our blog. We weren't doing it to try and make our blog famous or whatever it was. It was more so to record our own thoughts and to maybe share it with people who might find it interesting. And after this experience where we'd spent a day with a lot of soldiers, at a defensive perimeter, and I won't go too much details of what happened there, but I'd kind of documented the experience of getting there and what that was like, and the kindness of the people. And the story just blew up and went absolutely mad. And all of a sudden we wake up one day and I'm on the front page of an Irish newspaper saying, Irish terror tourist, and, Irish backpackers wake up drunk after a night out drinking whiskey, fighting ISIS, and all sorts of mad, warped versions of the story emerging on things like Lad Bible and all these kind of tabloids and whatever it is. And you bomb Margera and Akon and other celebrities in the US sharing all across their social media. And we're getting calls from production houses in the US who want to option the life rights of this war dog style story and turn it into a screenplay and all sorts of mad stuff. And we're sitting there, walking around bazaars trying to buy socks for kids. And we're like, what's going on? But we were able to use this kind of this viral media attention and say, hey, you're referencing our blog and using my photos and information. Can you at least put this fundraiser link in so we can make more money and do whatever you want? We didn't really care at the time. But then I started getting emails anyway from a lot of the big corporate clients that I had done, that I was doing a lot of corporate speaking gigs for, going, due to the nature of the attention around your profile at the moment, we're going to postpone the speaking engagement until maybe another time in the near future, whatever it is. And, after traveling for, 14 or 16 months and returning back to Ireland, the only thing going through my head then was will I ever get a job again? If someone Googles my name, all they'll see is me in military fatigues all over the, all over the front page of these newspapers. But I mean, deep down, I knew I was never really going to be working for anyone again. Anyway, I was kind of leading towards entrepreneurship, and I'd been self-employed at that stage for about 2 years anyway. So I embraced it. And, from going forward then, anytime I've traveled, I've always gone to, the places of human interest where I wanted to find out what was actually happening. Like going to the Rohingya refugee camp in Bangladesh and going to North Korea to find out what it's actually like, even though you get a very kind of facaded version of it, trying to poke holes and peek behind that, carefully when you're there, just to find out what's actually going on in the world rather than just read the papers and taking it at face value,
And the North Korea trip, without going into too much details, because I know that we're pushing time already here. But was that what you expected? Was that again kind of overblown by the media about how it was, or are the media kind of nailing that one in North Korea?
Media aren't far off the mark. There was one day we went to a kind of a model farm where basically it's just a machine for making food for the general populace. And I think maybe I was asking too many questions, but I was asking things like, so, what happens if you run out of fertilizer or if your tools break, who buys them, seeing as you only get to keep a portion of the food you produce. And they're like, oh, we make our own fertilizer, from our own waste and all that kind of stuff. And I was just like, the more questions I asked, the darker it got. And I got in a lot of trouble for slipping a lot of money in a pot in some woman's house. She probably shouldn't have done, to be honest with you, but like looking at where she was living and the kind of lifestyle she led, I thought like slipping €20 into a pot would have been like, a nice thing to do, but might have even caused, a lot of trouble between her and neighbors. People are always ratting on each other. If someone gets, a bit more, everyone's, it's like crabs in a bucket. They pull each other down, whatever it is. But yeah, it was pretty grim. See, like we went to one hotel, and as soon as we walked in, it was like robots powering on. They turned on the lights. The receptionist woke up from behind the thing. A girl started singing karaoke at the reception, and it was very much so. You experience a lot of staged things, but also you get to go to a lot of places where there's not staged. I got to go on, the metro through Pyongyang, where thousands and thousands of people are whirring around you and like coming up to you, being like, "Welcome to North Korea," or "Welcome to the PRK," whispering in your ear and then legging it off again. You're like, what's going on? So it is you can feel that there's a lot of fear, but you also get a sense of like they do love the leadership, like because all they see every day is the leaders smiling and pointing at things and how but they hate the regime. But there's like an idolism almost of the leaders that like you spend your whole life seeing these smiling leaders and hearing it and reading it constantly, and a lot of them actually do adore the leaders. It's kind of a weird thing,
Stockholm syndrome, probably.
Do you know what? Maybe that's what it is, but you'll see like 7 people sitting around, breaking ice up on the path because they all have a job. There's no unemployment, although they might all be miserable and getting paid nothing. But it's a really bizarre place. And there was a small part of guilt, after seeing that, realizing that I'd paid a pretty reasonable amount of money to try and get this insight. I wanted to go to North Korea for pretty much most of my life because I've just found it so bizarre and absurd. Knowing that a large portion of that probably goes to the North Korean government, who are treating these people like shit. And yeah, I had to kind of deal with that. I didn't feel too comfortable with it, but I definitely got a lot of learnings from it. And if I can, pass those learnings onto the world, maybe there's something in that. I don't know. Maybe it was slightly selfish too.
You have to go see these things though for yourself, though. Like you said, you could have learned like you learned in the Pakistan example. Do you know what I mean? So it was worth having a look for sure. What would be, so we're gonna finish off now and let you get back to your palm trees and your working space out there in Mexico. But we like to kind of finish off the podcast with some rapid fire questions, and then we like to contrast and compare the answers of the guests here. It's kind of Mark's party piece here. They don't have to be rapid answers, but Mark's gonna bang them out. What do you think, Mark?
Okay. Will, what apps do you use the most on your phone?
I use My Wall Street a lot, which is it's an Irish-owned company that allows you to get insight to how the stock market's moving and teach you how to invest in the stock market. And and you can buy stocks from in there. There's lots of kind of trading apps and stuff out there, but I use that one because I guess it's Irish-owned. I support Irish businesses, but also I find it extremely useful. They got a great podcast. They've got great spin-off products for long-term investment planning and stuff like that. Another one I use a lot is what we're using right now, which is Zoom, I guess, because I'm working remotely and everything I do every day is done through Zoom. I'm using Slack a lot. I use Instagram when I'm traveling to kind of, when I'm networking and meeting people. I guess I guess I use Skyscanner a huge amount when I'm, traveling normally. At the moment, obviously I'm traveling very slow because, I'm staying in more or less the same place in Mexico for a month at a time, getting a private room, finding a co-working space, and spending a lot of my time at the beach, maybe learning Spanish or exercising, whatever it is. I use TransferWise because I do a lot of international business. TransferWise is pretty handy. TransferWise is great for
maybe not.
Is TransferWise Irish company?
I think so.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
I've heard about Irish people. They might have been bought by now, but I think they did.
Yeah, because you can create a bank account in almost any country within 2 minutes. So if you wanted a UK bank account, you go on there, create one, and within 2 minutes or 2 seconds, you've got like a UK BIC and you've got a UK IBAN. that you can receive pounds with. So it's great for when you're traveling, like do business in Pakistan or whatever it is. Yeah, it's a great app.
Class.
Okay, what's the best business idea you've never acted upon?
This is a funny one. So I had an idea for a nudist dining experience, where it would be like a spa-like experience where you'd arrive in and you'd go to a cloakroom and you'd take off your clothes, put them in a locker, and you'd put on a bathrobe and slippers, and you'd have clothing optional seating, and you'd have nudist seating, and it would be about kind of entering into a primal world of a time before technology. So you'd leave all your gadgets at the door, all the food would be raw. It would be eaten off clay plates. It would be eaten either with your hands or with wooden cutlery, and it was about kind of like the primal nature of eating, but like with very, very tasteful vegan menus, 7 courses. You'd land in, maybe have a nice avocado cocktail or whatever it is, alcohol free, and feeling what it'd be like to a time of dining before dawn, and
maybe the best thought out business idea that haven't been acted on that we've had so far. So a nudist primal dining experience. I think that
I tried a nudist hostel for the first time this weekend just gone. Then it's a pretty interesting experience.
So is clothing optional in the hostel? People just walking around?
Nope, nudism is obligatory.
Okay, it's obligatory. Okay, I'd prefer obligatory, to be honest. I've been on a couple of these clothing optional beaches, and there's some people there. If you're in or you're not. Do you know what I mean? We're all in this together.
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a nudist, and I think I've only tried it once or twice, and I think it's just like nice to sometimes step outside of your comfort zone and try new things. And for me this year, it's about, I think, pushing myself as far as possible outside of my comfort zone. About 2 weeks ago, I tried a thing called Bufo, which is I think the world's strongest psychedelic, with a shaman in a mountain here in Mexico, where it lasts about 5 minutes and you see your whole life flash in front of your eyes, and you feel like you understand what it's like to die and be grateful for being alive. It's the most insane thing. So yeah, I think trying things like that, and definitely this experience last weekend of stepping outside of my comfort zone to be naked around other people for 2 days straight, definitely it was weird at the start, and after a while it was weird putting clothes on. I was like, why do I have to wear these things?
Yeah.
I can only see that you're wearing a long-sleeve t-shirt. Well, I'll have to take your word for it that you have pants on.
You're going half.
It's actually an Irish band as well that sent me this t-shirt, Wild Tibetan Monks. They're great. You should listen to them. They're pretty cool.
Good shout out. Okay, if you could do business anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Honestly, Ireland. It's great. Low corporation tax. Doing business with Irish people is great. You have a half an hour of talking absolute shite before you actually do business, which I love. British people don't like that so much. After 5 minutes, they're like, let's get into business. I'm like, no, let's talk more. So I like building relationships with Irish people and doing business. It's always a lot of fun. You can build trust that way. And also because I guess, doing business in Ireland, I guess, I've got a corporate events company as well called Event Labs, that we do events for, all of the big companies in the world, because they're all based in Ireland. So it's a great place to do business there and to network in that way. And I mean, love him or hate him, Ryanair, it's just a great airline for getting around Europe pretty easy, and all Ryanair flights return to Dublin. So, you've got an easy way to access the rest of the world from Ireland, even though we're a small, isolated little island, and it's home. It's home. And I think if you're going to do business, you need to also spend time around people you love. And as much as I like to work remotely, I think working in Ireland long term is probably what's going to be my thing,
Okay. How much money is enough money?
70,000 euros a year.
I like it.
I think that's enough. That's enough in Dublin that's what you need in Dublin if you want to basically not have to, think too much about money. And that's scary, that Dublin's become so expensive that, the minimum amount you need to survive in Dublin is probably around 27 to 30,000 euros. And that's not even minimum wage. To live comfortably in Dublin, to do all the fancy stuff of going out to brunches and going on holidays and live the lifestyle that people actually want to live, I think that was a number that was said to me. It was 70,000, which is kind of scary. But realistically, as long as you have people that love you, and as long as you have a roof over your head, and you take care of yourself and eat properly, money isn't really. It's not really the motivation that you should be having for living a good life.
Out of interest, Will, like where you are now, it looks like you're kind of doing the 4-hour work week or Tim Ferriss life arbitrage thing. Like how much is enough money where you are right now in Mexico?
The average kind of co-working digital nomad resident here probably can live off maybe I'm gonna say maybe about 1,500 euros, and that will cover their accommodation somewhere, their gym membership, maybe their few drinks and food in the evening, their co-working use, a few coffees, and maybe enough to get them around if they need to kind of go and check out a few experiences in the area. So I think you could live very comfortably in somewhere like Mexico or Thailand or these are the kind of digital nomad hubs, Bali, whatever it is, for about 1,500 a month.
Okay, very good. Okay, is it who you know or what you know?
Wow. that's a loaded question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look, you can know loads of stuff, but you need a team to implement some things. And I think we have found success within our organization because we all have a unique set of skills that complement each other that we don't have a full set ourselves. And I have great respect for a lot of these companies that have visionary CEOs. When you really dig into it, there's a team of people around them that complement their vision. So oftentimes it's who will help you, because you can't know everything, but you can know people who know more than you do.
Very good.
I like
okay.
Last one, Mark. What's the burning question before we let our guests hit the waves here? Okay.
If you could advise somebody to learn one skill or even have one experience, what would it be?
Learn to public speak. Because if you can learn to public speak, you can learn to convey your points. If you can convey your points, you can do sales. If you can sell, you can pitch. If you can pitch, you can make a business. So learning to public speak, deliver your message clearly, use various techniques such as pause, presentation, pronunciation, how to deliver, tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. If you can do that when you're talking and presenting, I think it's the most valuable skill that you can have.
And is there a book or a course or anything that you did or that you'd recommend?
No, School of Hard Knocks. Just you got to get up and start doing it and work hard at it. I think I did a talk once when I was in the Students' Union in DIT once, where they brought in because we were going to be talking in a lot of classrooms and lecture halls around 5 different campuses that had 22,000 students, and so they kind of teach you the basics of it, but really it's just you can't beat standing on a stage and just talking to people. Maybe go do a speech and drama class to give yourself some confidence and give you creativity and presenting an idea in your head. But I think you just got to keep doing it.
Keep going. Okay, Will, thank you very much for joining us on the SharkPod tonight. Usually we send a SharkPod T-shirt or a mug. We don't even know where to send it though. By the time you get there, which one would you prefer? Would it be a shirt or a mug?
I think a mug would be nice, because I think a podcast is about talking, and you usually fill a mug with things that you talk over, like a cup of tea or a coffee. So I'll get a mug off you when I get back to Ireland. I might be back in a month or so for a few new projects.
Perfect. Well, wish you all the best of luck with everything, and thanks very much for joining us on the SharkPod.
Thanks. A pleasure. Best of luck at the podcast, and keep getting great guests. It's great to listen to.
All right. Thanks, Will. Talk soon. Bye.
Best of luck. Bye.